excuse me, we're going to start now, if that's okay. Thanks. All right, we're starting the Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee meeting for this day, February 16th, 5 p.m. Is there any courtesy of the floor?
Yes.
Okay. Can you please state your name and your address for the record, right?
Thank you. I am Victoria Optoff Cordaro, 1682 Woodfield Drive, Bethlehem, Northampton County, Lower Saucon Township, Pennsylvania. I am here with a number of people, so I will defer first to Ginger Petrie, who lives at 2626 Reddington Road, Hellertown, Pennsylvania, 18055.
Okay.
Hello, thanks for letting us talk. I don't have anything written in front of me, and I will be fairly brief, as I know you're busy people. Victoria already told you my name is Ginger Petrie. I've actually met you, right? Okay, the reason we're here is because we actually have a crisis. We consider it a crisis in Lower Saucon Township. We have, my property in particular, parallels the side of a mountain that was owned by the town of Bethlehem that has now been purchased by the Bethlehem landfill. My husband and I have over 200 acres on this farm, Reddington Road, and it was very historic. The house was built in 1774. We purchased it from the Scheimers. I'll try to get quickly into this part of the history. We purchased it from people named the Scheimers. They are actually in a lot of the record books. There's a book on the Scheimer family, so it has a lot of historical value. So our farm on the side of the mountain part parallels this property that was now purchased by the landfill. The landfill is planning on expanding their landfill that they currently have, which is at the top of the mountain and has 6 years left of life expectancy. They bought 275 acres that are right next to us. I wish I brought my photos in, but my car was locked. The problem here is that they're planning on expanding this landfill down the side of a mountain. I cannot give you the exact slope, but we could present that at another time. At the bottom of that mountain, it's all forest. At the bottom of that mountain is a stream called the Bull Run, which runs directly into the Lehigh River, which then runs, of course, into your big rivers, Delaware and so on. Our property was put in open space quite a few years ago, and we were vetted in order to do that. We have rare plants, lots of animals, many different kinds of trees. And the property that's right alongside of us that the landfill now owns basically has the same thing. It has all the deer and the coyotes and the foxes and birds and hawks, red tails, anyway. We're in a situation where we have been in front of our council many times and the different departments now as well. They have changed it from rural agriculture to light industrial. And there is no other type of business that could actually be done on the side of that mountain. It's specifically done for the purpose of the landfill. The next thing, we're going to be in front of them on the 27th of February. We have a hearing, which other people are allowed to come to if they do have concerns. We are going to be in front of them because now they're changing it from special exception to the conditional use. There's an application in front of them for that. We feel that that's going to basically just free them up from a lot of the council control and the township control, and then they're going to be just directly involved with the DEP. At this point, we have many, many people that are making complaints on odor. Well, of course, the things that are turning out and going into the Bethlehem septic treatment plant can't be filtered out. That's heading for the rivers. We have the mud that's in front of Apple Butter, but in my case, the biggest concern is the fact that they're going to destroy the side of a mountain. Now, in phase 5 that they've already put in front of the Planning Commission, they are planning on expanding that landfill down the hill at least 117 acres, if I'm not mistaken. And like I said, it's a steep slope. Now, at this point, you can see this landfill from 33. Anytime you're approaching Lowe's, Panera, any of those places, never mind St. Luke's Hospital, all you have to do is look up to I'd say 1, 2 o'clock, and you're going to see the landfill on the side of the mountain. Well, as you're looking at that, if you have a visual, anytime you're on that highway heading toward Route 78, you can also see where there's a little parallel line that's cut through the trees. That is where there's a pipeline that had been there years ago. We own all the property, just so you have a visual. We own all the property to the left of that. Now, they have now purchased land on the top of our mountain, and they've now purchased another new property and gave the owners another 10 years to live there, which is now across the whole top of our property. So personally, we're very threatened. The people that are living in Steel City, as well as on Reddington Road and Quarry Lane and Reddington Road South, they're all in a position where all of this stuff is now going to filter downhill, because we all know about gravity and what's going to happen. We're having trouble getting our council to listen to us. We've had many experts in many different fields come in front of them. Tara was actually there as well. And a letter from Bob Freeman, the DNL Trail, the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, and everything is falling on ears that couldn't care less what we have to say. So I'm asking you to please consider helping us. Victoria will tell you our website, and the girls have more of the facts on how many tons are coming in, and that over 60% of the trash is coming from New York and New Jersey. It's not even our local trash. And as a matter of fact, even last night our council president sat there and was telling us that the reason why the information from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission was not valid was because only 16 people attended that meeting on Zoom. And there's over 37 members. So I'm just letting you know that we are hitting a brick wall, and we need some help. So if there's any other thing you need to know, either I can help you or the girls can tell you what we have. But I'd really appreciate if you could spend a little time looking up our website and seeing our plight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good evening.
Can you just state your name? And
Yes, I was going to go there. My name's Laura Ray, and I'm a Lower Saucon Township resident. I sit on the Environmental Advisory Council for the township. I've been on that board for at least 16 years or so. So I'm going to go all over the place, lots of information. Wanted to talk a lot about get rid of these, I can't read with them, about why this would be of concern to the county in particular. And, you know, a lot of information that I'm sure you're very familiar with from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission's Return on Environment studies that have been done. They cite a lot of information about participation in outdoor recreational activities. So 75% of people partake in walking, 23.9% fishing, 33.5% in birding, 23.9% nature studies, wildlife watching, over half the population do that, kayaking and canoeing, 27.1%, biking, 47.5%. So if you tie this all into the whole area where this is happening, it's along the Lehigh River, it's along the DNL Trail, the National Heritage Corridor. The county has invested money in those things, along with the county park, the Louise Moore Park. So if the river is impacted, which it will be even more than it already is, it's going to affect all these things. It'll make it less valuable. There have been plenty of studies that you're probably familiar with since you're the environmental committee that directly correlate between having a healthy, protected environment and the economic growth that it contributes to an area. Way back in 2000, Lower Saucon Township did a natural resource inventory, and then we also created an open space action plan. And the Lehigh River Corridor was specifically pointed out as one of the very significantly important areas that should be preserved. It is highly sloped. Most of the slopes are greater than 25%. If it were to go through like a normal planning, they'd probably, out of the 275 acres, they probably wouldn't even get 5 acres that they could normally build in on. So the forested slopes are essential to maintaining the quality and the quantity of the water. In this, there's lots of springs and seeps in the area, as well as it prevents erosion and silt going into the streams and the river. In the study that was done, there were quite a number of species of concern that were identified, so things that are threatened or near extinction. So much so that they didn't really even want to put specifics into the report because they don't want people going there and going after these. There's also a lot of species that habitate the area, so by wiping that out, we're taking away their habitat. If I should speak, I guess, about the facts and figures that she said. So landfills are the number 3 leading source of methane in the environment, and CO2 is the other big thing that emits from the landfill. So that goes into the air. People don't think about it so much because you don't see it, but you can definitely smell it when you go by there. There's 3,000 trucks coming in there, bringing in the garbage every month. And one of the big concerns then is with the leachate coming out of the landfill. So leachate is the garbage soup, we'll call it, which is the decomposing materials in the landfill, mixing with rainwater, and then it goes directly into the Bethlehem sewage treatment plant. That amount varies. In December, it was 1.8 million gallons that went down to the treatment plant. They don't pre-treat it at on-site, so whatever is coming out of there is going down to the plant. And we know that the treatment plant isn't set up or designed to handle the types of materials that go into that landfill. And there's sludge, there's radioactive materials, there is asbestos. There's all kinds of stuff that goes in there that's not like the normal thing that a treatment plant would be treating for. So pharmaceuticals is another big one. And then with the new changes in the regulations, we know PFAS is a big issue. So we know that stuff's in there. Everything goes into that landfill. So that goes down to the treatment plant. They really can't handle it. What comes out of there gets discharged into the Saucon Creek, which is only feet away from Lehigh River, so it dumps right into the Lehigh River. With about 275 more acres being clear-cut, that's going to double the amount of possible leachate that gets created. So maybe we'll have 3 million gallons a month going down to that sewage treatment plant and out into the river to just degrade our area. So with the investment from the county that you put into, I don't know, building up the recreational use in the area, you might have your interest there. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you.
Thank you again very much. I'm Victoria Optoff Cordero. I will be the last person that speaks on this issue. So I want to say thank you for your time and consideration and for all of your diligent thought on this. My role in discussing this issue to you this evening is to discuss with you the legal ramifications of what Northampton County and what you can do. The Lehigh Valley Planning Commission issued its letter back in November about zoning. And I understand, and we can all appreciate that Northampton County has no authority or ability to intervene in municipal zoning. However, now the landfill has filed a conditional use application, which Ms. Petrie had identified, that is set to go before an appointed attorney who will preside over like a hearing the application for the expansion of the landfill on at least 117 acres of the 275 acres of forested land. That is a conditional use application, and so part of that hearing, and the most important part of that hearing, is that people come and testify and ask for party status, asking for the township to put on certain conditions for this particular development, given it the unique location and placement and the issues that are involved. So I propose to you that you should come on February 27th at 9 a.m. at the CY Cove Fire Hall in Lower Saucon Township, and from the county's perspective, protect all of the investments you have placed on the DNL Heritage Corridor and the Lehigh River as it leads into your own park at the National Museum in Easton. You have significant resources there. You would certainly have standing, given that you are within a mile radius of this proposed, your park is within a mile radius of this 275 acres of land. You would certainly be impacted by the smell, by the water runoff and the dust and the silt that will come down the steep slope onto Riverside Drive and into the Lehigh River. I want to point out also the unique feature on this land are two recorded environmental easements. These recorded easements specifically name the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor as the reason in which these two parcels of property were supposed to be protected. They, in turn, create a public trust. The public trust doctrine can be implemented with these specific easements. They predate the 2001 Environmental and Conservation Act, which some people will say limits people's ability to enforce those easements. However, because these predate those easements, that specific act, these easements would fall under different case law and incorporate a larger swath of people who could then enforce those easements. And I think with your partnership with the DNL and all of the money you've invested, it would be very imperative that you partner and participate in that conditional use hearing.
This is part of the 9/11.
The last thing I will say is that this corridor is part of the 9/11 National Heritage, or 9/11 National Trail that connects the memorial in Virginia with the 9/11 Twin Towers Memorial and Shanksville, PA. So you have national significance there, in addition to the DNL. Your own Northampton County environmental, I think it's from 2013, discusses this specific parcel as a national registry area of significance, and it highlights the Bull Run Creek area. It's Appendix 8 to your own natural resource inventory. I see that Mr. McClure is here tonight, and I appreciate that. I didn't realize he was here this evening. But I want to highlight something that Mr. McClure had indicated, because I really appreciate everything he's done to protect our natural resources and partnered with you as the executive. And he indicated in his December letter to the Morning Call that he promised that he would preserve open and green space. And by the time my second term ends, we will have invested $25 million toward that goal. So I am encouraged and I am excited that our executive and this council can partner with us and walk beside us and show the community that we stand behind those statements. So I thank you, Mr. McClure, for making those statements and for making that investment. And I thank this council, and I implore you to please come on February 27th at 9 a.m. and ask for party status in that conditional use hearing and protect your investments. Thank you.
Can I ask you one question just before you sit down?
Yes.
Who owns those two easements, the two conservation easements?
So
Is that Lower Saucon or is it Northampton?
the easements are between the property owner, which is now the landfill, and Lower Saucon Township. They implicate the Delaware National Heritage Corridor. They are specifically named in the easements. So they are implicated as a third-party benefactor of the intent to preserve that land in its natural state. The easements also specifically prohibit landfill development,
Really?
really, specifically. There are all of the land sits on two separate parcels. There are two recorded easements. To quote, the restrictions and easements shall constitute a covenant running with all of the property described herein and shall be binding upon, at the time, the city of Bethlehem and all other persons and parties claiming through the city herein and for the benefit and limitation upon all future owners of said land and premises. This declaration of restrictions being designed for the purpose of assuring the preservation of the Delaware and Lehigh Canal, National Heritage Corridor, and State Heritage Park. And during such operation of the landfill, to as great a degree as possible, to preserve the original character and scenic nature of the land.
Yeah, sometimes, how, I don't think the landfill would do that. Do you have copies of that?
Yes, we have copies of the easements.
Can you give those to Aileen to make
Yes.
copies? Because at least I would like a copy. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. It might be better to save paper that I email them to her if that's acceptable. If not, I will hand you what I have. That's fine. Are there any questions, anything else I can answer for this body?
No, I'm pretty satisfied. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming in to the courtesy of the floor. And, I gave you as much time as I could, but
I
I really have to
appreciate-
move on.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Tara,
Yeah.
can I ask you a question? Are you aware there's a lawsuit pending?
Yes, there are two lawsuits pending. One is a procedural appeal that challenges the way in which the technical notice was provided to the township residents. That's filed with Northampton County Court by a number of citizens. There is a second substantive appeal that challenged the underlying validity of changing the designation from rural agricultural to light industrial, part of which is because of the environmental easements that sit on top that prevent any other use other than the natural state of the land to protect the DNL. So there are two, and there is quite a lot of issue and problem that came before the court just last week about the township moving forward and having this hearing on February 27th for the development of the land, because as these appeals move their way through court, there is a strong likelihood that the underlying zoning will be overthrown. There are already been technical deficiencies identified with how this was noticed. There was not proper filings with the law library, which will throw out the zoning as on its face, and they will have to start over again from scratch to attempt to rezone the land. But one of the major components of the substantive appeal is that these easements create a public trust. Therefore, that cannot be just thrown out by a group of township council people who were elected recently. When that easement was put in place in 1994, it made a public park. And you just can't tear down a public park because you chose to put something different on it.
So I'm clear, this is dumping into the Lehigh,
It does, $70,000
Yes.
does buy a lot.
and that would be, the one we have in Williams Township is also dumping into the Lehigh.
I can't speak personally to what the Schrin landfill does, but the Schrin landfill is only a couple of miles away. In fact, there are garbage trucks that run every day between Schrin and Bethlehem landfill.
Yeah, it's dumping into the Eastern Water Suburban.
Yeah, we need to fight what's in front of us.
So the proposed expansion would cause called landfill activity for an additional 30 years. So that's an additional 30 years of strain on the Lehigh River, the DNL, and I don't know about anybody else, but all of the 5K events that happen on the DNL that people either want to start from the National Heritage Museum or they want to end there, they're not going to want to do that activity anymore when they have to run by a smelly garbage dump, which is literally what they will do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, and that brings us to our next presentation, which is the wasting of our waterways. Good segue, right? Tell us about the Lehigh River.
Yes, thank you. Is it possible to pull up the slideshow? If not,
Sure is.
if not, it's okay. But
I think we have that in a queue somewhere, right?
thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all for having me. I'm not sure if I can go full screen here, but that's okay. Let's see.
I think you can press the slideshow at the top where it says slideshow and then say from current slide
Oh, yes, thank you.
or from beginning. That works too.
Okay, perfect. Let me just see here. It's okay. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you thank you so much for having me.
It's because you're tall and you're right there.
Right on the mic. Sorry to frighten everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name's Flora Cardoni, and I'm the field director with Penn Environment and Penn Environment Research and Policy Center. We are a statewide nonprofit organization that works to make sure everyone has clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, protected public lands to enjoy, and a safe and livable climate to call home. And as a citizen-based organization, we have members and volunteers all across the state, including right here in Northampton County. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all today about a threat to Northampton County's water and our health. So today I'll be talking, I guess I did the introduction. Today I'll be talking about two of Penn Environment Research and Policy Center's recent reports. First, a report entitled Wasting Our Waterways, and then, the threat of toxic pollution to the Lehigh River. And then I'll talk about our recent microplastics report, another threat to waterways across the Lehigh Valley. And happy to answer questions that everyone has. So let's get into it, wasting our waterways. So I'm sure I don't need to tell you all.
Oh, I apologize. I want to see if I can get these other TVs on.
Oh, that's okay.
Are not all the, oh. And I just want to say, Flora, I was not aware that you were going to do a second presentation. So for the sake of time, we might ask you to just do the waterways presentation and then come back and do the microplastics, because I want to make sure that the other two individuals who showed up today do have their time. And I'm sure everybody would love to see you again.
Thank you. Yeah, this first one's pretty quick, but you let me know about time, and I'm happy to stop at the one, certainly. So I'm sure I don't need to tell you all as county officials how important the Lehigh River is to this area, providing tens of thousands of residents of the Lehigh Valley and the surrounding state with a place to fish and tube and recreate and enjoy. When I first moved to Pennsylvania, I lived in Bethlehem and certainly enjoyed living so close to the Lehigh myself. And around 50 years ago, our nation came together to pass the Clean Water Act so that waterways like the Lehigh River would be safe for swimming and fishing, and to support and provide safe drinking water. And yet half a century later, too many waterways, including the Lehigh, are plagued with toxic pollution, in part because of industrial facilities that continue to release large volumes of toxic substances, threatening the health of people and ecosystems. And that's certainly what we found in our recent report. So in 2020, industrial facilities dumped more than 5.8 million pounds of toxic chemicals into Pennsylvania's waterways statewide, which was the 12th highest of any state or territory in the country. Applying the EPA's tool to measure toxicity, I'm not sure why the display is that way.
You can go to the display settings,
Yes, let me see.
because you have to swap the presenter view for the slideshow view.
Okay.
Don't duplicate the slide. There you go. You almost had it.
Is it working? No.
It's not quite clicking.
It appears to be frozen, so.
It's frozen. That's super awesome.
I have to go get Spencer.
You know,
There we go.
I could also
you
just
could just
present
go
it this
down
way.
like that.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
totally fine. Let's
For the
see here.
sake of time.
Yeah,
I would say let's
absolutely.
just Do it like this.
Yes, perfect. So applying EPA's tool to measure relative toxicity, Pennsylvania had the third highest amount, as you can see here, of toxic releases of chemicals linked to reproductive health risks of any state in the country, dumping 22,000 pounds of chemicals linked to reproductive health risks into Pennsylvania's water. And the Lehigh River watershed was the second highest amount of these pollutants of any major watershed in the entire country, with more than 9,000 pounds of these reproductive toxics released into the river in 2020, which is where our report got its data from. So the Lehigh River watershed, the second highest of this specific type of pollutant, and also ranked in the top 30 watersheds in the nation for most cancer-causing chemicals released in 2020. And here in the Lehigh Valley, Holcomb Inc. cement manufacturing plant was the largest source of this toxic chemical release. The highest most toxic chemicals of any facility in the state, 15th highest polluter in the entire country. So as a note, the toxic dumping numbers in this report come directly from data that these plants report to the EPA and to the EPA's toxic release inventory. And this is an important point. The toxic release inventory is only a small portion of the water pollution threats that we're experiencing. The full scope of toxic pollution flowing into our waterways is even greater than what's reported to the toxic release inventory, because this data only includes these toxic dumping releases. It does not include toxic pollution from fracking in our state, from chemicals that industrial facilities send into our sewage treatment plants, which then wind up in our waterways, heavy metals and other toxins from stormwater runoff, pesticides or toxic runoff from industrial agribusiness, or given the presentation we just had, things potentially leaching into our waterways from landfills. So this is really just one piece of a much larger picture of water pollution in the Lehigh, likely just the tip of the iceberg, which is pretty alarming. So with facilities dumping so much pollution, no one should be surprised that so many of our waterways here and across the country are unsafe for swimming, but we should be outraged, right? We should be able to use our waterways. They shouldn't just be a polluter's dumping ground. So to solve this problem, we do have a few recommendations. Most of what's needed here, honestly, is action from the EPA, from Congress, requiring that the EPA is updating pollution-controlled standards in order to reduce these toxic releases into our waterways, strengthening that standard so that less of this pollution is allowed. Also increasing, what's counted, so things like PFAS contamination and other pollutants are being tracked and regulated. Officials should require industrial facilities to remove toxics from wastewater that they send to sewage treatment plants that are unable to be removed by those plants, so that then they're discharged into the waterways. Industry, as much as possible, should be required to switch from toxic chemicals to safer alternatives. And, we should be really moving at the federal and state level to make sure product manufacturers are dramatically restricting their use of toxic chemicals and PFAS and other things where safer alternatives already do exist and could be being used. A few other suggestions are that facilities that use or store large quantities of this toxic material should not be permitted near our waterways to reduce the threat of spills. And of course, we need EPA to be fully funded in order to review and enforce water pollution permits. So a lot of this stuff, as you can tell, is really aimed at the EPA, Congress, and state officials. At the county level, certainly, it's always helpful for county councils to pass resolutions calling on the EPA or Congress to enact some of these recommendations, more of which are listed in the report. As far as county council does have any jurisdiction around Clean Water Act permits or toxic dumping, certainly this data and this just being the tip of the iceberg, it's good to keep in mind. And certainly, especially as our we experience more and more impacts of climate change, more extreme downfalls, rainwater flash flooding events. The importance of green stormwater infrastructure is also really important. There may be a larger role for county council to play there, both to absorb that, but also to absorb some of this toxic runoff before it reaches our waterways.
Be an example of that last one.
Green stormwater infrastructure. So this could be things like porous parking lots instead of traditional cement that absorb water instead of allowing runoff. It could be more green spaces like native plantings in medians, so it's not just concrete, things like green roofs, again, so water is captured by plants instead of running off. There's other examples too, and I can certainly send more information about that.
It's really interesting.
So where are we with time?
Let me ask, how long
Yeah,
is the
absolutely.
wildlands presentation going to be?
I can do 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, really? I mean, I want you to have your time.
10 minutes?
10 minutes, okay. And how long are yours? Brian?
10 minutes altogether.
Really?
You can go through ours if it's okay and then go back because it's
Can we
actually a
do
really good
that?
segue.
Yeah,
between
we can
wildlands.
definitely do that.
Let's do that. And
Perfect.
hopefully we'll get it all in. We'll accommodate everybody, because,
Great.
so,
Happy to do that.
actually, yeah, go ahead, Brian, you go first, and then.
Thank you.
So we're doing we're going to circle back to the presentation for Penn Environment at the end, and then we'll also get in wildlands, and we're going to skip to Spangler Preserve Land Management Lease Agreement.
Can we start with wildlands and then go to those others, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Okay.
I thought that was her presentation.
It is. I want to introduce Abby because it's actually a county
Oh,
partnership
it's a
that we've been
partnership.
doing. Yes, for the past 6 years now, we've had a contracted partnership with Wildlands Conservancy, roughly or $75,000 per year, which gets us free environmental education, programming, technical assistance, and a lot of the projects that you just heard to implement to help solve some of these non-point solution projects. So with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Abigail Padishaw, who's with Wildlands Conservancy and one of our lead partners on all of our projects.
Okay,
Hey,
thanks.
don't feel like you have to rush, okay?
Okay, I mean, I don't,
Get what you need to out, because this is important too.
I am not tall. So I just want to say thank you to Brian and to Northampton County. I'm going to talk a little bit about the partnership that we have between Wildlands and Northampton County, and I just want to say it is genuinely the most productive, most reciprocal, most respectful partnership that I have ever worked with, really, in my 20-some years working on environmental issues in the Lehigh Valley and the Lehigh River watershed. So you guys should really be commended for some of these great things that I'm going to talk about. This has been a wonderful partnership. Okay, I think everybody here in the room knows Wildlands Conservancy, but we are first and foremost a land trust, and what that means is that our primary mission is to protect land in perpetuity from development. We do that in a variety of ways and with a variety of partners, from federal agencies to local governments. In addition to doing land preservation, we also work to restore critical habitats and to protect water quality and to provide environmental education for our community. And this is our 50th anniversary this year, so. So, as Brian said, Wildlands and Northampton County have had a contractual relationship since 2017. And as I said, it's really brought an enormous amount of benefits to the county. We figure, rough calculations, our partnership has been able to leverage about $4 million worth of investment into the Northampton County environment. So there are multiple components to that contract. Primarily, we work together to do habitat restoration on our streams and our open spaces, including all of the county parks. We assist the county with trail planning and development and some key land acquisitions that are required to make those trail and greenway connections. We provide thousands of education programs from school-age 3-year-olds up through adults in the community, geared towards a wide variety of topics that I can touch on briefly. We help the county with acquiring funding from state and federal and local sources. We pool our funding to match funding sources to get the most investment into the county that we can. And of course, we really work to connect the community to our environment and specifically to Northampton County's open spaces. So very briefly, I think you all know that Northampton County is really successful when it comes to land preservation. You have more than 2,400 acres of permanently protected land. That includes 20 conservation easements in the county that Wildlands holds, 3 of which we co-hold with you guys, with the county. Wildlands owns 2 nature preserves in the county. And we work very closely with the Game Commission to try and protect the Kittatinny Ridge and do a lot of land preservation there. So that's just a glimpse of land preservation success in the county. I'm just going to highlight just a handful of projects. One of the things Wildlands does is we have partnerships with multiple municipalities here in Northampton County. One of the most noteworthy is Moore Township. You know that Moore Township has open space funding, and we've protected more than 200 acres with them in partnership through their open space program. Wildlands Conservancy helps the county work with Norfolk Southern to acquire right-of-ways and to acquire pieces of property that are critical for closing trail gaps. We have helped the county to protect and purchase properties along the Kittatinny Ridge to assist with additional trail gaps. As I said, we own 2 nature preserves, including the Binney and Smith Preserve, which provides public access to the Bushkill Creek and to the Two Rivers Trailway. We are the co-owners, the county and Wildlands, on the Horth easement. That's more than 200 acres of protected property in Williams Township that we use for all kinds of higher level public education. Just some examples. As I said, we focus on trails. Wildlands Conservancy, along with the DNL and Lehigh County and Northampton County, are the steering committee members for the LINK Trail Network. So we work together to promote trails and greenways and further projects that further enhance our greenway network. Wildlands Conservancy is the manager of the Lehigh River Water Trail. So the Lehigh River Water Trail is 72 miles. And it facilitates people getting onto the water and feeling comfortable exploring the Lehigh River in a way that is safe and easy to navigate. I mentioned that we work with Northampton County on railroad coordination. That's a very difficult thing to do. It requires a lot of expertise to work with the railroad on land acquisition and things like that. So Wildlands brings that expertise. And another example would be that Wildlands was critical in completing the North Catasauqua Trail Connectivity Plan. So just some quick examples here. In addition to land preservation and trail and greenway development, we work very closely with the county to protect the county's waterways. One of our biggest projects that we've been working on is to remove dams on the Bushkill Creek. The Bushkill is a tributary directly to the Delaware. The Delaware is the largest undammed river east of the Mississippi. So if we could remove the dams on the Bushkill Creek, that would be the first time in about 300 years that we would be able to have migratory fish entering the Lehigh Valley. So very exciting. This is a $3 million project, roughly, in coordination with multiple state, federal, and local agencies. The first 3 dams there should be removed this year, this spring. Here's an example of one of the before and after pictures. So this was a dam that was at the Crayola factory, the old Crayola factory.
Oh, yeah.
That we removed a couple of years ago, restored the floodplain, improved the water quality, improved the habitat, improved the fishing opportunities. So just a nice success story. Here's a photo of some stream restoration that we've done on the Bushkill Creek. And you can see, as I said, we're really invested in making community connections. So we always incorporate volunteers, get volunteers connected to the county parks. Another project that we will be going to construction for this spring, this summer, is the restoration of the Archibald Johnston Preserve, the Monocacy Creek as it flows through there. If you're familiar with this site, this is one of the craziest projects I've ever seen. The Monocacy was basically rerouted through this Archibald Johnson property. So we've been working on engineering and permitting in coordination with Brian and the county for years. We're ready to go to construction this year, so that's very exciting. Another roughly $1 million project that'll be happening in the county. We've done a lot of restoration of the floodplain and the riparian buffers and the in-stream habitat at Fry's Run Park. Indian Trail Park is another example of a project that we worked on together. A lot of our streams were really intensely channelized, and a lot of infrastructure was put around those streams. And then as we developed the watershed and the hydrology changes, that infrastructure really doesn't hold up. That's what you see here. So this is an example of the type of issue that we work on together. Same thing with the Little Bushkill Creek. We've been working on the Little Bushkill to restore that for years. And the other thing that I want to highlight that we do together, and the reason that Northampton County deserves a lot of kudos, and Brian and his department, is how much restoration is going on county parks. You guys are really a model for how to start to bring nature back to the urban landscape through your park system. So many parks for many years were just mowed flat grass and a couple of ornamental trees. And with Brian's leadership and help from Wildlands Conservancy, we have been identifying places to bring nature back, to do more tree plantings, to do more wildlife meadows, more wildlife habitat, things like that. And again, as you can see, we always focus on making sure that we're bringing volunteers from the community into the parks. Just some other examples, you know, I love these pictures. To me, this is what a county park ought to look like, or a township park. So this is the look that we're striving for instead of just mowed grass. Of course, we have mowed grass for our soccer fields and all those types of things, but in places that aren't used in the county parks, they make great meadow restoration opportunities. We're doing a lot of work at Louise Moore Park, for example. That's a whole lot of mowed grass.
Sure is.
Right, so it's not fuel efficient, it's not time resource efficient. And it's not that aesthetically pleasing for the people that are using the park. So we've been working there for several years to do more and more native grass and meadow restoration, which is not just, you know, beautiful and aesthetically pleasing for the users, but it provides, or it helps to provide, this sort of mosaic of multiple habitat types throughout the county that is really beneficial for wildlife. And then finally, as I said, we bring a lot of environmental education to the county parks and the citizens of Northampton County. Since our partnership started in 2017, we've had more than 2,000 residents engaged in education programming that has been supported through the contract with Northampton County. And we do that at pretty much all of the parks. A lot of that's done at Lake Mincy, at Wayne Grube, and Louise Moore, just because of their size and how many resources they have. I just want to point out that this is a very professionally run program, lots and lots of state and national awards that the programming has won. All of our staff, many of our staff are former teachers, but everybody is certified in all the safety clearances and all that kind of stuff. And as I said, this is our 50th anniversary, and these pictures kind of give you a snapshot of the breadth of programming that we provide. So 3-year-olds learning the basics about the environment, or grown-ups learning how to snowshoe and start to get outside and enjoy healthy activities. So This is my last slide. Here's just some samples of the types of programming that we're going to bring in 2023. Lots of guided nature hikes for the general public, pond and stream studies for school students, opportunities for folks to get out on the water, to canoe, to bike, to hike, to snowshoe, to learn astronomy, to tag monarch butterflies. So it's just, I know that there's a lot of challenges. We've heard about a lot of challenges. I just want to take these few minutes to highlight some of the really good stuff that is happening in Northampton County. And again, to thank you guys and thank Brian, because really with these last 5 years of the contract, we've been able to greatly accelerate the amount of good stuff that is happening in Northampton County. So with that, that is just a snapshot of some of the stuff that we're working on. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Sure. So you said that was the last 5 years of the contract. How long is the contract?
So we just renewed the contract for another 5 years.
5 years.
Yes.
It's up for tonight. Oh. So
Oh,
can you just
maybe that's why
discuss?
I'm here.
Yeah, that's why you're here. So can you just discuss that briefly?
Sure, so.
Go ahead. Good.
You've laid out the argument of why it's important.
Right,
Okay.
so.
I didn't know I was doing that, but okay.
No, that's fine.
But thank you.
Our last contract actually ended December 31st, and when we looked at it, we thought there was an amendment, or there was a clause in there that we could do another year. It was not put in, so after discussing it with the administration and Wildlands, just for continuity of keeping all of these projects going, the ones that we're working on right now and planning for the environmental education, we're looking at a 5-year new contract.
Great,
So that's the resolution that's in front of you for tonight then as well.
great. And I think that's, the return on investment is exponential, given this partnership. And I know I've always tried to be active in my participation with the Wildlands because I believe in your mission and your vision, and I think it definitely aligns with that of the county. I can't stress how important I think it is to maintain, these habitats and the restorative practices along the Lehigh and the Bushkill and all these waterways, and how important educating the next generation is to make sure that we have water protectors and land protectors in the future. So thank you for all you do. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay,
Just real quick,
sure.
Brian, the park in Howardtown, they replaced the old cement swells and replaced them with it was quite interesting to watch it, and nobody knew what the heck they were doing. And what I really appreciate what you guys do is you explain what you're doing, because they put a little plaque up, because so many people are like, what? And the plaque says what we're trying to accomplish and why we're doing it. And I think that's so critical, because people don't understand, and so putting a plaque by there and was a great thing, in my opinion. Thank you.
Awesome. So that's on the agenda for tonight, so we don't have to move forward, right? Got it. Excellent. Thank you so much, Abigail,
Thank you.
for coming. And Brian will now continue with the Spangler Preserve land management lease, right?
Right, and this kind of goes into what we've been talking about, managing our parks in different ways from the past. And the 3 agendas tonight, the Spangler, Little Martins, and Bonarchek, are our 3 newest park preserve areas. And we're working on a new agreement and getting away from just a farm lease. We have tens of hundreds of acres that we have as a public park, and the majority of it might not be the way that we see future land management of the park preserve being done. So what we're looking at doing is starting with our 3 newest ones, creating a land management plan. We're working with the Northampton County Conservation District, their ag tech, and he's working with NRCS to develop conservation plans for each of our preserves, our parks, that have an agricultural component on them. So we'll be updating all of the brand new leases, some dating back from 1994, and putting our new park rules and regs into it, and also holding the farmers or whoever's doing the land management for the best management practices in ag or stream restoration, riparian buffers, and things like that. So whoever's doing the land management, it might be actual lease for farming, but it could also be land management where they do hay fields and they cut it once a year. And as a return on really helping us out, they might take it for feed for their animals and things like that. So there's going to be different variances of these land management lease agreements. They're not going to be called farm leases anymore. And we've found out that there's some that just have old handshakes. So we need to get everything up to date really on some of our properties that we have, since we have over 2,300 acres. So those will be coming in a future, because they'll have to be done by ordinance. We look to start these in March, and if there's any questions about more of the specifics, we can get the ag tech from the Conservation District here to explain and talk about each and individual one that comes forth.
Any questions on that?
You mentioned NRCS, you might want to let people know what that means.
It's the National Resource Conservation Society, I believe. It's the federal conservation.
You're really used to the soup now.
I am, NRCS, yeah, NCCD, DEP, all like these little alphabet ones, yeah. I failed my test on that one.
We can Google it.
Okay.
We'll get it, don't you worry. Sure can.
I appreciate what you're saying because of the farmland and the hay. I mean, that makes sense to me. I mean, that's only fair if they're willing to do that they can use it for the animals. You're right about the handshake. That was very common at a time when you could maybe get away with that.
Right.
But I was just driving out on Hecktown Road the other day. I had to go out to Koch now. But I wanted to drive back to 191 on Hecktown, and there's that stretch, and they have this sign that says no trucks. And I know zoning laws, we talk about that. I don't know how long they can hold that up. But as you drive out, there's this long stretch of farmland that it curls around, and I think it comes out on Green Pond Road. I could be wrong. But as I was driving and maybe not paying as much attention as I should, I was just looking at that and seeing how, and it reminded me of how much the county looked like that at one time. And I think it's, it's good for the soul. It's something that just, I know I'm sailing into the wind on this when it comes to development, but I'm surprised that actually there has been a move to develop that, because it's Hecktown Road connects, you're not that far from the interchange of 33. But I think that what you're.
Let's not put that into the ether, how about that?
What's that?
Let's not put that into the ether.
Well, I'm of the opinion that business people and that are well aware of the ether of Northampton County, regardless of what we say. I'm just hoping that they don't. But I just wanted to compliment the thinking. I agree with your thoughts on that, lease part of it and come up with unique ways to handle that with fees and that. And I know the executives, we talk about passive parks. I'm an advocate of that too. I don't think we need to put things up everywhere ourselves. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about it.
Sure.
That's all. Thanks.
Very good. So we'll move on to, unless anybody has any more questions or comments. Okay, Little Martin's Preserve Land Management Lease Agreement?
That just falls in with the,
thing.
yeah, all three of the land lease agreements I kind of covered. I was hoping to go into more detail tonight, but the ag tech's sick right now, so he wasn't able to come and give those specifics, but you'll get them in the future.
Okay, all right. And you're withdrawing the resolution for the cholera conservation
Yeah,
easement?
caloric conservation easement, it's actually a property on the Kittatinny Ridge in Upper Mount Bethel Township. It's one of our Livable Landscapes grants. We provided it back in, I believe, 2019. And working with the Nature Conservancy, now we didn't have any direct involvement with this. This was a Nature Conservancy project that was working with the township and collected funds from the township and us. And they were also looking at getting funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to really put this property into the Cherry Valley National Wildlife Refuge. Mm-hmm. For whatever happened between the Nature Conservancy and the landowner, the Calors have since rescinded their really involvement in doing a conservation easement. So the funding will come back to us, and we'll have more funds to be put out for more and different land preservation within the county.
Okay. Great.
That's the 118,000?
Yes, and it'll go right back into the OSI environmentally sensitive for grants. That grant round is open monthly. It doesn't have a set date, but actually, just yesterday or this morning, Sherry Acevedo had her grant workshop for the livable landscapes at Jacobsburg. Well attended, over 30-some different people, which are mostly municipalities.
Great.
So
Great. All right. Anything else?
if I have time, I can just run through some quick updates, but. So just to give you updates on upcoming construction projects and other things that we're doing within our parks, we've really taken the nice spring-like weather here in the middle of February to get some things done. We're doing a lot of work down at Wyatuck right now, a lot of tree removal from dead ash and dead tree of heaven. That's been about a 3-year program, using the tree of heaven for the spotted lanternfly and cutting and putting pesticides on those. Now they're really dead after 3 years of that. So we've taken a lot of those down. It's opened up the park a lot, really hoping to see what it looks like in the future, in the spring here. There was a lot of shade, a lot of just overgrown and wet areas. So I'm really hoping this dries it out and opens it up for more passive recreation opportunities. The new pavilion should be in this spring. I have a meeting tomorrow morning with our contractor that's going to be putting it in. And then the new entryway and some landscaping will keep going on. And that's part of a DCNR grant that we have, I believe $200,000 from DCNR. As I mentioned, the Livable Landscapes grant workshop that Sherry provided this morning up at Jacobsburg. Most likely next month, you will have a ordinance for the final trail easement to get to Bath Borough for the extension of the Norbath Trail over 25 years now, and we finally see the end of light to have the final Norbath Trail being established. As you know, we have a $300,000 grant for construction of that, so when we finalize this last segment through easement, we'll go right into design, engineering, and permit, and hopefully construction either later this year, but most likely early next year. Up at Mincy Lake, we'll be doing our recreation rehab projects up there in the spring, new walkways, picnic grove area on the west side, 2 new pit toilets, 1 on each side of the park, and we may possibly redo the DCNR grant that we put in the fall to do the full improvements over on the east side. We weren't successful of getting that one in the fall round. Over at Louisemore Park, you heard Abby talking about some of the restoration work that we did there. We're going to be redoing some of the native islands that we did. Some of those shade mixtures that we worked with last year didn't really take hold, so we're looking at a new concept and a new mix from Ernst. Tennis courts will be repaved or resurfaced. And with the high demand and actually people just building their own pickle courts in the one tennis area, the 3 tennis area courts that we have, we're going to keep 2 of them, resurface those, and keep those as 4 tennis courts. The other section that has 2 tennis courts, we're going to be resurfacing, repainting, new netting, and every component of it, and we'll have 6 pickleball courts in that one section. So we'll be expanding the opportunity for tennis and pickleball at LMP. For the first time in I'm not even sure how many years, probably before I came to the county, the windmill will be fixed.
Really?
Yes. We found a company, they're outside of Indiana, and they do windmills. They have the insurance requirements that are all needed for us, so that will be fixed and up and running, hopefully this spring or summer. And with that, we get to re-water the pond in the back. It's about 1.5 acres of pond water back in there. So really naturalizing the park, bringing it back to life from where it was. Working on the Tottsgap or the Two Rivers Trail with Bushkill Township. We're finalizing a collaborative intergovernmental agreement with them to construct the trail and use the TASA funds for the material cost. And then we're starting design, engineering, and permitting for the southern section to get all of that going and use the TASA funds and the DCNR funding to hopefully have that constructed next year. Abby talked about the Monocacy Creek Restoration Project down at Archibald Johnston. We just had our pre-bid meeting there yesterday. So hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we'll have someone at least under contract, or we'll have it approved, and then we'll go through the under contract stuff. But we're looking at spring, summer for that project to get going. So we have a lot of stuff really moving forward this year in a lot of different areas.
That's what I like to see. This is what happens when you skip a meeting in a month.
Sorry.
Because we didn't have the environment meeting last month. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Tara. I probably wasn't here when you did it. I don't know if you have, but I know the Norbath Trail comes to Jacksonville Park, and that's where it ended.
Yep.
With Keystone, you have the quarries, and believe me, and you have everything, the plant. Do you have it planned already, where you're going to take that path to get it into Bath?
Yeah, so that was one of the longest holdups we had, because it was purchased with Land Water Conservation Fund. We had to go through a rigorous process of getting an easement swap with Keystone Cement through National Park Service and DCNR, but it'll extend pretty much straight out from where it dead ends as you go east off of Jacksonville. And then the easement goes in front, pretty much in front of the sign. I think they're going to lose a little bit of their parking where the fence is, and then it's going to hug 329, but then make a sharp right towards the Monocacy. And it'll make another sharp, it'll turn at the Monocacy and come up to Mill Street in the Bath Borough Authority there. We'll put another 8 parking spots, I believe. The survey was just out there on Tuesday, so.
All right, and you know what, I don't want to take up the time, but I know that's been talked about, and I know because of the quarries and everything else, and the traffic, when you have the plan together, you have a map, you can show us exactly how. Yeah, I'd love to see that, and I'm glad that you're at that point now. I think everybody's wanted to see that extension for years. They just didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and part of the easement, we have to work with Keystone Cement with the safety crossings and all of that anyway, so that'll be a key component of it all.
Awesome. Awesome. Good.
Real quick, Brian, the ash trees, are they coming up with anything? I realize they can save them, but it's very expensive, the chemicals. Are we getting anywhere with this? I mean, we're losing a lot of good trees.
No, simple answer, no. It's more of becoming of an issue for, yes, find the ones that are over roads or trails, take them down, and the other ones are kind of food or homes for squirrels or owls in some other parts until they really fall, but.
It's really creating a lot of nice mushrooms, though.
Has there been a good education on explaining to people about moving these, ash is great firewood. People cut it down and they move it, and that's how my understanding, that's how it's been spread. A lot of the spread has been through firewood moving. Is there enough education out there about that, or?
Oh, how interesting.
I know Penn State Extension has courses and there's quarantine areas, the same as with the spotted lanternfly. I can see if they have any other additional material, but they're really the ones that have done the education component of it.
I mean, you drive around and look in our woods.
Oh.
It's bad, and we are losing all our ash trees. It's a real shame.
Well, ash.
Brings up a point.
I'm sorry, no, if you have healthy ash, that was always used for, and longbows. People in archery, the British, an ash longbow was a great thing, so who knows, if you have some archers that want to try and see if they can save it, they'll take it.
Right. Thank you. I didn't realize that transporting ash trees or for firewood was.
Yeah, it's the easiest way to move the disease. It's like anything.
Oh, it's like
Once
just
you take it and move it, it starts somewhere else, and there's other things with like the hemlocks, with the woolly adelid, there's a maple thing coming up our way now, there's a host of different things.
All right. Okay, hurry up. Yep.
I swear I look at my woods and it seems like 25%, if not more, are ash trees.
I believe
Is
it.
it one of our most populated tree species in Pennsylvania?
I don't exactly know, but I'm sure it's probably up there. It's a fast-growing,
And is it true that we might lose all our ash trees in like 20 years?
possibly, yeah.
Yeah. It's a shame.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Hey,
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. And we're going to bring Flora back up here for the last round of this show, right?
Thank you. I'll be quick.
No, you got at least 15 minutes.
Oh, I don't even need that many. But thank you for letting me talk about this report as well while I'm here. Thank you again for having me. Love all the work Wildlands Conservancy does, so I was happy to get to hear that too. So I wanted to talk about one other of our recent reports that we released last fall, Pennsylvania's Pristine Waterways and Microplastics. So recently, our staff, state, local officials, concerned citizens across the Commonwealth tested 50 of Pennsylvania's cleanest rivers and streams for microplastic pollution. And specifically, we tested streams that Pennsylvania categorizes as exceptional value for the cleanest streams in the state, high quality for the next tier of clean streams, and Class A trout streams for Pennsylvania's important natural cold water rivers and streams. So these are the waterways that PADEP classifies as, you know, the cleanest, the standards that safeguard our waterways. So of the 50 waterways that we sampled in this report here in the Lehigh Valley, we took water samples from the Monocacy Creek, Bushkill Creek, Little Bushkill, Saucon Creek, the Little Lehigh, and parts of the Lehigh River to test them for microplastic pollution. And we also tested a lot of waterways just north of us in the Poconos, and again, all across the state. So we carried out this testing because microplastics and other plastic pollution pose a threat to our health and to our environment. That's because plastic doesn't biodegrade. So while an apple core or a piece of paper break down into smaller and smaller pieces and eventually into organic compounds over time, plastics don't do that. Instead, plastic breaks just into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic, never totally goes away. And plastic that's less than 5 millimeters or about the size of a sesame seed are called microplastics. So research over the last few years has really expanded around microplastics in our environment. We found, and by we I mean researchers around the country and world, have found microplastics all over the place, from the peaks of Mount Everest to the deepest parts of the ocean, and even in rainwater and in the air that we breathe and in the food that we eat. And it's in fact estimated that on average, humans are ingesting about 5 grams of this microplastic every week, which is roughly the equivalent to the weight of one single-use plastic bag, or 1 credit card's worth of microplastics every week. This is really concerning because microplastics contain chemicals that are harmful to our health and the health of wildlife and ecosystems. This is a relatively new field of study, so not too much is known about the full scope of these health effects of microplastics in humans, but these chemicals in these plastics are certainly linked to endocrine disruption, hormonal effects, and reproductive disorders. So it's clear that it's a problem, but we wanted to see what the prevalence really was here in Pennsylvania, what the prevalence was here in our waterways. So we did this survey to see if these harmful microplastics were in our most pristine streams. For this report, we sampled waterways for 4 types of microplastics: fibers, most often from textiles; films, most often from flexible packaging; fragments, which are, you know, the little pieces of larger plastic; and microbeads. So some of this comes from litter, some from waste in landfills and incinerators, some from clothing, and some from plastic beads in cosmetic products, some from the small pieces of plastic called nurdles that are used to make bigger plastic, and some from plastic bags, foam takeout containers, et cetera, that are every day sitting in, leaching from our landfills, polluting our waterways and littering our communities. And sadly, we found microplastics in all 50 waterways that we tested in all 300 samples of these, you know, exceptional value, high quality Class A streams, the places DEP defines as our cleanest. We found microplastic in every single waterway, including every waterway we tested here in the Lehigh Valley, again, Monocacy, Bushkill, Little Bushkill, Saucon, Little Lehigh, and the Lehigh River. And so, breaking it down, not every waterway had every type of microplastic, but at least one type was found in every waterway. And most waterways had 2 to 3 types of microplastics. And for example, the Monocacy Creek had all 3. So you can see the results of this, you know, back at this map if you're interested. We have an interactive map on our website, pennenvironment.org/microplastics 2022. But clearly this is a big problem. It's in all of our waterways here. It's in the food that we're eating, the air that we're breathing, and is linked to some serious health problems. Sadly, there's no silver bullet for tackling microplastics specifically. We really have to change the way society fundamentally produces and markets the products that consumers are buying. We need to change the ways that we deal with waste to take on this form of pollution. We need to make the creators of this environmental hazard take responsibility for the products that they're putting out in the marketplace. But certainly one big thing that we can do is to stop this pollution from the source so that it's not in our waterways, it's not in our landfills, it's not getting into our rainwater, into our agriculture, and into our air. And so certainly here are a few recommendations. We're working with county and local officials statewide to pass measures to tackle single-use plastics, like bans on single-use plastic bags or polystyrene foam containers. We're working at the state level to pass some producer responsibility or bottle deposit laws, things that can cut this stuff off at the source. We're also working to modernize the state's recycling laws to make sure that we're actually recycling this plastic that is still being produced, and certainly opposing handouts to the fracking to plastics pipeline that just wants to pump out more of these plastics that we don't need, because really nothing we use for 5 minutes should be able to pollute our environment for thousands of years and threaten our health in this way. So we think that this report sets up some alarm bells for residents. And of course, if there's anything that you all want to do around plastics or any other environmental issue, Penn Environment is happy to be a resource and a partner, whether that's just providing information, working on ordinances for anything. We're always happy to help. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I think this is an important issue because plastics are everywhere. And I know that I brought a plastic resolution to this body at some point in time, I think 2019, 2020. And it did not go further. I would like to see it, but I think the hope is that we're really seeing a lot of local vendors switch over. And I know that Wegmans does not use plastic bags, and they charge 5 cents or 10 cents or whatever it is for a paper bag.
Yep.
And that's really taking leadership on sustainability in their model. And I appreciate the organizations and the companies that are doing that. I understand how people feel about the forced nature, but I think that we should definitely transition at some point.
Well, and I think as more states, Maryland has banned plastic bags, New York State has done it, New Jersey's done some of this and is moving towards it. More and more companies probably will take this stance to standardize.
Yes, and what I would really like to see is like Arts Quest and Music Fest switch from using plastic cups.
Yeah.
And
The
plastic
step.
water bottles and have more filling stations. And I would like to see that happen because I think about the bags and bags and bags of cups that are probably utilized every weekend, every day at Arts Quest because they don't give out glass. And I know during Music Fest, we have, what did they say? 1.2 million people were there? And they're not just
huge.
drinking one beer.
Yeah, no, I know.
And they might be using a refillable cup, but not everybody. So there's a lot of work that could be done, and I'd be happy to work with you on that and try to revive whatever I can.
Yeah, that would be great. And it's just, as we learn more about these threats, and especially given that fossil fuels are needed to make plastics, it's contributing to climate change, polluting our air before it even gets to this point. Given that so many sustainable materials exist, it just seems so silly to be threatening our health for something we use for 5 minutes and then stays on our planet forever.
Sure. I remember when I was doing this, I took my you are welcome to use the restroom anytime you want. But yeah, I'll wrap it up. You know what? I think that this is a valuable conversation, and I appreciate you coming here, Flora. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And again, any environmental issues, this or otherwise, we're happy to be a resource.
Sure.
Thank you.
And we'll adjourn the meeting so that he can relieve himself. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Huh?
All these things weren't a problem because one, plastic.
No one give it, yeah. And
Reusable bottles. You put it in the metal.
I remember seeing an ad, they showed you. In the 50s, they advertised plastic.
That's forever.
Somebody needs a boomer. I said, excuse me, I was a better recycler than you are today, as
Yeah,
they
but-
held a plastic cup and were yelling. I said, everything